Tech by Tips.
Welcome to another Tech by Tips video. In today's video, we're going to be addressing another video request. Some people complained about the last video because I created a whole video on something that in the end was not working. But I tried to explain to the people that gave me that feedback that the videos are not only for you as a consumer to get the applications going, it is also something that I create for the developers of the application so that they can see problems with their applications and things that they could improve to make it a better experience for the users and to target the right audience. So that case was geared towards the developers because in the end, even though I tried following their instructions, I couldn't get everything working as it was supposed to be, but that hopefully helps them make the application better and actually make it useful for people. Remember that I said that application that was requested is a very new application. It's in its infancy. It's not even a minor release. So you have to understand that sometimes I'm going to cover things that will just not work, but that's part of it. It's part of what my channel does. It's providing tips not only to you to get something working, but also to developers to make them aware of things that will help them make their applications better. So in this video, we're going to be talking about the application named Jellyfin. It was a request that I received from the Hudson. And as you might know, if you don't, then you're going to be learning about this. This is basically an alternative to the Plex media server. So it's an application that lets you consume the media that you currently have. So in this case, this person is saying that they were able to get it set up, but they cannot figure out how to access it remotely. I'm going to address how you set the whole thing up and how you have access to that application. So let's go ahead and talk about Jellyfin now. So if we go into their GitHub page, it's in github.com/jellyfin/jellyfin. And you can see that it's been released 77 times. It has 1,132 contributors, and this application is basically entirely made with C#. So it's very in line with the R's, and it's a very mature application already. It's a free software media system that it has a web interface, which is another repository that is part of this application. And basically it tells us that it's a media system that puts you in control of managing and streaming your media. So that's for you to consume your media and manage it. And it is an alternative to Plex and MB, which again you need to pay for the full services. So in this case, it provides you with a dedicated server, and it has applications also that you can use that are in mobile devices. And it's descended from MB, and it was ported into .NET Core. Basically that's how it's built and where it came from. And it says that there's no licenses for the features. There's nothing hidden. So it's just they're trying to make it open, accessible to you so you can use it without having to pay any money. And then they give us a good link here to the documentation that when you click that, it takes you to where we're going to go next. And they also allow you to join a community and communicate with them and give them ideas, or probably also submit issues or talk about the issues that you submit in GitHub. They have a lot of good information here. It's for many languages, so pretty straightforward and good. They give you more information here about how to clone the repository, how to contribute to it, and how to install it, and how to run the server. But for that, we have a documentation page. So like I said, if we click here on documentation, it takes us here into this website that says, welcome to Jellyfin documentation. And as you can see here on the left side, it has everything that you need to get Jellyfin working. They have a quick start with instructions on how to set things up. They have an installation section here too. They have how to administer, how to work with the network, and all of that stuff. So let's go really quickly into the quick start. So we're gonna go for the information that it has here. So it says that basically how to get this working, you need to install Jellyfin on your system however you want. They give you a lot of options. So you have a container, or directly on Linux, or on Windows, or on a Synology NAS, Mac OS, etc. And then it tells you that to configure it, you need to set up a configuration file, and then you just go to the IP of the device that you have it running, and then port 8096 to access the web client. So let's pay attention to this, 8096. And then it says you follow the wizard and everything will be set up, and then you'll have access to that. and then you can secure your connection using SSL certificate. You can find out about how to do that in the network section, how to put it behind a proxy, and all of that stuff is there. And that's it. Basically, with that, you're ready to run Jellyfin in your system. So in this case, even though they have a Synology guide here, I'm not going to go with this guide per se. This is kind of using the old way of creating the containers. It kind of gives us an idea of what we need to do. So we create the container, then we have to mount a folder that is where our media is located. And we also need to set up a folder where our configuration files will be located. Additionally to that, that's it. You just run it, and then you should be able to access it on port 8096 based on what they say here, even though I don't see any port being exposed here. So that's something that I want to make a note on that later, because if you need 8096, you need to expose it, and I don't see it anywhere here. So let's go ahead and use the container version, because we now have Synology 7.2, which allows us to use Docker to build that. So we're gonna go and look for the Docker compose file. So we're gonna copy this, and then again, it says we need our configuration path, we need a cache path also, and we need the media. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a project. So first thing, let's go into the file station, go into the configs, and then in here we're going to say create a folder for Jellyfin. Now we have that, and then in here what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the cache and the config both in this location. So now we have those in there. We already have our media defined. So if you're using the latest version that I specified for the way to store the media, then you would have the HTPC folder that has all the media in there. If you're using the old way, then you would have to go into the media and mount all those different folders into different paths within the container. So I'm going to go using the latest one, which is the improved version if you want everything to move faster. And okay, so we have the configs for Jellyfin. Let's also create a project for Jellyfin. So let's go here, Jellyfin, and here's where we're going to create our Docker file. So now that we have that, let's go back here. We go into project and we say create, and we're going to say Jellyfin is going to be the name of our project. And we're going to pick that path in the Docker configs, the Docker projects. Jellyfin here in the project is going to be where we're going to create that Docker file, and then we paste what we found on the website. We'll have to look at this and see how we're going to do it. First thing, I want to capitalize that. The container name is going to be Jellyfin with capital letter. We're going to be using the Jellyfin image in Docker Hub, so that's perfect. And here we have to put the user ID. So in our case, like I said all this time, for our default administrator user, that's going to be 1026 and the group 100. If you have used a different user instead of the first one that you create when you set up your Synology, then you have to figure out what that number is going to be for that one. Then the network mode, I don't really need that. It's going to by default use the host. And then here we have to specify the volumes that we're going to put to this container. So first of all, let's remove this extra media because we have it all packed into the HTPC folder. So let's name that media. And then in here we have to look for the paths to all of these things. So we go in here, we're going to look for the configs. So we're going to go here config, and then we're going to look for Jellyfin, and in here we go here properties and copy this path, and this is going to be the path for our config directory here. And then we need to do the same for the cache. So we go back one, and I said that I put the cache in here, so let's do a properties and copy this. And that's what we're going to put here for the cache. And then for the media, we have to specify the path in our system. So back again, but this time instead of Docker, we're going to go into HTPC and then media. That's where we have all our stuff. So I'm going to say properties, give me that. And now we put that in here because this is the source of our media. So it's going to be mapped, the source in our NAS mapped to the /media in the container. The config folder in our NAS to /config, and the cache directory to the /cache inside the container. Then we go down here, restart unless stopped. That looks accurate to me, so we leave that there. And then this is an optional parameter that we can put here, which is if we want to expose this outside. In my case, I'm not going to do that, so I'm just going to comment it all out. But this would work in the case where you have a domain, for example, and you're exposing this, and your router is allowing traffic from the public internet into this. So you would put the domain name here where you're exposing your Jellyfin instance. And then in here, it says that this is also optional. It may be necessary for Docker health check to pass if running in a host network remote. But in my case, I'm just going to remove this. This is going to be more than enough. This is what we need. And then that's going to be good. I'm going to say next, and then next. And then in this case, uncheck this because I want to talk about something. So then done. So now we have our project here, but remember what I said here. In this file that we just edited, so let's go back into the file, we don't see a mention of the port anywhere. So we need to set up that, because in the documentation, this is telling us that we need a port for this, and that port is 8096. So we need to expose that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into one of the previous projects that we set up. So let's say, for example, totally. I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to pick the option that talks about the ports. And I'm going to go back into Jellyfin, edit that, and then put that in there. And now we have to specify what is going to be that. So they said it's 8096 inside the port. So we need to put that on the container side. And then what port do we want to use for our NAS? When we reach the IP of our NAS, on which port we're going to see Jellyfin exposed. So we can leave it with the default that they have here, which is 8096, or we can go, let's say, 8073, because we've already used 8074 all the way up to God knows. So that's going to be good enough. So then now we know that the container that is listening on 8096 is going to be exposed in the IP of the NAS in port 8073. So let's save this, and then we can build the project now. So let's say okay. It's going to pull that image and extract all of those layers, and then it's going to build that container. So that takes a little bit of time, so I'm going to pause it here, come back when that is almost done. Alright, it has pulled everything. The image layers are pretty big for this image, so it took a little bit, like a couple of minutes, and now it's creating the container and everything. I noticed that it created its own network for the container. Let's see how that behaves. If that doesn't work, then we'll go back and put it as the host network as it was in the original file. And we got the exit code, and we also got the pop-up here saying that everything was created properly. So let's check if everything works or not. So now we have a container here, which is Jellyfin. So we should be able to go in here and look at the logs and see how everything is going. And it looks like it is working. It is working. Let's see if we got any more updates. All right, it says it's bound to the 000 IP, and I'm not seeing any more updates. So let's try to see. Oh, there we go. A little bit of updates. It says an operation of type SQL will be attempted to build a table. Okay, so it's now building a database for itself. So it might be a SQLite database that is creating in the NAS. Here we go. We see more stuff. So it says Kestrel is listening. So it's loading things that it needs. It also loaded plugins for other things like the movie database, studio images, open movie database, music brains, audio database. So that's nice. It's loading a lot of things that'll make it easier for us to use this. And it's still working. So let's just give it time. Startup complete, core startup complete. And it looks like it's done finally. So we should see files here in the configuration folder for this application. So let's go into configs, and then Jellyfin, and then just validate there's nothing in the cache. World is only a font, and then the configurations is here. So that's looking good. And then in the config folder we have some things. All right, let's see if we can get access to the user interface now on the IP of the NAS, and then we're going to use 8073, I think is what we assigned to it. And we are here. We are greeted by the wizard for the Jellyfin application. So let's select our language. English is fine for me. Then we have to specify a username here. So let's say I'm going to use my name here, and the password is going to be Jellyfin. All right, here we go. It says we need to set up our libraries. So we click here, shows. Let's rename this as TV in the display. Pick a folder. Then it would be media. For this one will be TV. Okay, preferred language, English. Country, United States. Special seasons display name, special, that's fine. Okay, here's all the stuff that you can change yourself. I'm not gonna touch it. I'm just gonna add it as it is. The only thing, put the artwork into the media folder, that's fine. Okay. So now that I picked a folder, it stays here. So good. Now let's do the same from movies, folders, it's gonna be media, movies, and then again the language, English, and then the region, United States in my case, and then scroll down, save artwork, and okay. And then let's add the music too. Actually, let's add anime. So shows, but then there's gonna be anime. I don't think I put any anime in here, but just in case. And then anime, okay. Save artwork, okay. And music. All right, so now we're gonna have a few libraries here. Some of them are gonna have content, others are not, but that's part of this. I just wanted to show how it works. And okay, so we can continue now to next. And then it says preferred metadata language. In my case, it's gonna be English. You can pick the language and the region here. And then allowed remote connections to the server. Yes, if you want to access the server outside or in your network from another machine, definitely yes. So this automatic port mapping should be UPnP, so to allow your router to automatically open that port for you. That'll be easy for you to do if you do that. So I'm gonna mark it and say next, and that's it. We have configured Jellyfin. So now if we were to log in here, all right, I'm not getting an error. I was able to log in to Jellyfin, and here we see my media, where we can click here and see all the options. It's very similar to Plex. So you have your media on the left side, and you have a dashboard you can create, metadata, and the settings and all of that. So if I click, for example, on settings, then I can see all of this, and I can change configurations in the application regarding many things like playback, subtitles, etc. If we go to the home, we see this. Let's say I have content here. So what I can do is, for example, go into music, and then if it scans my library, which I need to figure out how to do. All right, so to scan the libraries, because I did not mark them when I created them to be scanned, you have to go into the dashboard here, and then once you are in the dashboard, then you'll have an option here for libraries, and then you see a button here that says scan all libraries. So we're going to do that, tell it to scan the libraries, or you can go here also and scan the libraries, scan for new and updated files, and you see that it refreshes and scans. But yeah, you can scan it here, and then it should look in the NAS for what you have. So let's see if it found anything now. Let's go back to the home. Let's go back, for example, to music. I still don't see anything. Let me check other libraries. Yes, it's not seeing anything. Okay, if you see here, this is written in a different way here. So it says it's a bind mount, and then we provide the source and the target here. So it's written differently from here. If we go into the settings of the project, especially in the container, for example, and then we look at the volumes, I see that it's not showing up as a mounted volume. So that's why it's not seeing my content. So we should not use this way to mount that. So let's edit this so that we can actually mount the content of our media properly. So let's go back into the project, and I'm gonna have to stop this project. Here we go, it has finished. So it stopped the container. Now we can go here and let's rewrite this in the same format as the one on top. So we're going to remove all of this, and we're going to say path in the NAS is going to be mapped to a path in the container. So the container path is going to be /media, and then the path in the NAS is volume1 HTPC media. So now we don't have any complaints here. It's the same type of mounting, so it should work now. So let's try that. Let's say rebuild. Okay. So now it's going to recreate that container, and then we should be able to see that media inside Jellyfin. So let's give it a little bit of time to start the container again, and then we'll be back. All right, so we got the exit code 0 and the notification here. So let's clear out of here. We should see the container back up again. Let's follow the logs just to make sure that everything's okay. So since this is a new container, it's going to try to do its thing, but since we already have that folder with all the configurations, it should come up really fast. Let's see. It's loading a lot of stuff. It didn't have to create any SQL stuff because it already had it. Kestrel is listening. All right. Cleaning up the collections. Looking good. Available filters and all that stuff. Available hardware acceleration. Okay, and here it is. Startup complete. So now let's go back into the website and reload and see what we get. Jellyfin is loading, and let's see if we can see now the content. So let's go back into the dashboard and let's try to rescan our libraries and see if everything works this time. Let's validate the container to see. All right, we now see that we have the HTPC media there mounted to the media folder. So let's see if it worked this time. Oh, actually, let me see if the libraries are correct. So it says /media, so that's correct. That's the right path. All right, let's see if we see anything now. Still nothing. Still nothing. All right. The fact that we are not seeing anything here leads me to think that the way that we specified the user for this application according to the documentation is wrong. So let's go back into our project and follow what we have done before with other projects. So let's go, for example, and look at Ombi. So here, remember, we always use the environment variables for that. So we specify the time zone and the group user ID. So let's do that instead of using what they recommended in their YAML configuration. So let's get rid of this part here that says, oh, we need to stop it. All right, it has finally stopped. So the change that I'm going to try now is I'm going to read off this user here, and I'm going to use the normal way for this. So I'm going to put environment variables, and then I'm going to put one for the time zone, one for the user ID, and for the group ID, and let's see if that makes any change. So let's save and build again and wait for it to start, and then we'll be back. All right, let's see if that made any difference. Let's refresh this application, and we probably need to scan our libraries because now we do have the content in our libraries. So let's see if it automatically scanned it or not. If not, then we force a scan for it. So as we can see here, still I don't have anything in there. So let's go back into the dashboard now, scan all the libraries, and it should take a little longer. Yep, now it's taking longer, so definitely now it can see the files. So that's a good sign right here. So let's let it do its thing, and when that's done, we're gonna go back into the home page and see if we can actually see our content now. Alright, it took a little bit of time, but now it's done. So let's go back into the home page and see if we can see anything different. As you can see now, everything is loading. It automatically showed us stuff here in the home page. So we have, as an example that I put here, the 3-body problem as a series, and then we have the Alive movie as a movie, and then we also have a Spanish band added in here. So we have all that in there. We should also have some anime, I believe. Oh, but it's live action, so I need to fix that. It should have been in a TV series. I thought it was anime. But yeah, it read all the libraries properly. So if we go into movies, we see the movie. If we go to anime, we see what I thought was an anime. If we go into music, we see the music. And if we go into TV, we see TV. It means that our configuration now is properly configured. And I hope that this example of how to troubleshoot problems helped you out. So let's go back into the configuration and make sure that you can see what I did. The first thing I did is making sure that the name of the container is correct, that we're using the right image, that we are mounting the folders in our NAS to the proper place in the container. So we have the config folder in the config in the container. We have the cache folder in the cache. And we have our media in the media. And we say restart the container unless we stop it. And then we specify that we want the application to be exposed in port 8073 in the IP of our NAS, even though the container is listening on 8096. And then I made sure that the container has permission to read all of these folders by giving them the user ID of the administrator in the box and the group ID of that administrator in the box, and I also set up the time zone properly. So now all of the configuration is correct, and we can validate in the application that our configuration in the application was also correct. So we mapped different libraries to different folders in the NAS, and it was able to read them, and everything is looking good. Now we can go into more details about this. We can also test it if it is working. So let's just click on something here. So as you can see, it's very similar to Plex. It brought up a play button down here with a bar that gives you the updates. And it works the same with the TV shows and the movies. It works very, very similar to Plex. It's just completely free, open source. So now we validated that it works. That's perfect. Now, the main configurations of the application are in the dashboard. So here we can do everything that we normally do in the configurations in Plex. So you can see details about devices that are connected to our Jellyfin instance, which version we're running. We can scan the libraries directly in here. We can restart and shut down the application. We can see alerts in here. For example, in this case, it's our login that was not successful. We can see all the paths that are being used by the application and activity logged in here. For example, I just played something and it recorded that I tried to play that. So that's really good. You see all those details. Then if we go into general, we see more information about the application. You can specify the server name here. You can select the language that you want to be used to display everything. Where's your path of the cache? Where's the metadata stored? You can enable quick connect also. You can change information here about the disclaimer that shows up in the login page at the bottom and other things. I'm not going to touch this. You can basically go into the documentation and read about it. Here's where you manage your users. So if you want to create another user and you want to restrict the permissions just like you do in Plex so that they can only have access to a certain library or stuff like that, you can do it here. You can create the user. You can manage the user here. Manage the access to the library, set up parental controls, for example, if you want for your kids to have access to your library, all of that in there. Here's where you manage your libraries, and here's where you see all the information about the playback. For example, if your server has a graphics card, you could use that graphics card to do the transcoding of the files. So for example, what does that mean? Let's say you download a movie, and the movie that you downloaded is in 4K. But 4K is too heavy, you don't have enough traffic, so you want it to be able to convert automatically from 4K to another, let's say 720p. So you can change that here and use a graphics card for that. So if you have an AMD processor, you can select that. If you have an NVIDIA card, you can select that. If you have an Intel graphics card, you can do that. And there's many options, even Rockchip and Apple, all of that. So you would pick that here, change all the appropriate configurations, and it'll do the transcoding for you on the fly. Here you have options about other things, information about the streaming that you can change here, like the bit rate and other options. And then here, when you click on devices, it shows you which devices are connected to your instance, and you can delete connections that you don't see that are normal, and you can always see them here. And here's you see the full activity. It tells you everything where they connected from. In my case, this is an internal IP because it's Docker, but it could track if you were using like a server that is exposed, you can track that properly here, and it tells you which user did what, etc. And here's for the DLNA server if you want to enable that functionality. So that allows your media to be accessible by other things, like for example Windows Media Player and stuff like that. If you have a live TV provider, you can set that up here. You can connect your tuner and your TV Guide data provider, and then it'll be able to show you live TV information, and you can actually watch your TV directly in the Plex instance. You also have the option to set up a DVR. So if you have live TV and you want to record something, you can set up the DVR and do that here. And here you manage all the networking configuration. For example, which port is the container listening on, and all of that. I'm not going to go into the details. You don't really need to change this, but if you would need to, you can follow the descriptions here or go to their documentation. It's pretty straightforward. If you need to connect things, here's where you put the API keys. I'm not going to touch this, but the documentation is very good and clear about that. In the logs, you see the logs of everything that happened. So you can click on the log file and then it'll take you there and you can see everything that happened in the application. And notifications, you can see the notifications here. You can connect with plugins to notify to other systems using webhooks. And here's where you get the different plugins. So you have a list here that is enabled, but then you can go into the catalog and see what other plugins are available, and you can connect with other things. You see it's a lot of stuff, so you can make use of that. And you can also connect repositories here so that then other plugins and things can become accessible for Jellyfin. And then here's where you track your scheduled tasks. For example, if you have something that scans your library, is here, or if you need to refresh information about people there too, or pull information about the media that you have, like the images or metadata and all of that is here. You can track it and see what's in there. So that's basically the configurations that you get for this application in the dashboard. And then here's you have your libraries, which is the same as clicking those buttons up here. And that's basically it. The application is pretty good, straightforward, very good alternative to Plex if you don't want to pay for the Plex Pass. This gives you basically the same thing, all the functionalities without having to pay extra So I hope this was useful to you. Now, the other thing that the person requested in this video request was, how do I access this? Like in this case, I'm inside my home network, so I can just put the IP of my NAS and the port, and it'll take me directly to this server, like we've been doing with all the other applications. So if you want to access this from outside of your home, let's say, for example, you are at your friend's house and there's a group of people, you have a party or something, and you have music, you want to play that music on their home in a big stereo system or something like that. So you could connect a laptop to the stereo system, and then that laptop could be connected to your Jellyfin instance. Either, I would suggest, through a VPN, so you'll have a private way where you can connect from outside into your network, so that it looks like you're inside your house and you will access it normally, like I'm doing with the IP of the NAS and the port. Or the other option is, you would have to go into your router, you would have to open a port. In this case, if we're exposing on 8073, what we would do is go into the router and we say open port 8073, and then depending on your router is how you do it. You could just specify the IP of the NAS, or you can select from a drop down the name of the NAS or the IP of the NAS and the port that you're exposing. So basically what that is doing is that whenever someone from outside of your home asks for a service in that port, instead of the router saying, I don't know what you're talking about, and blocking the connection, it just passes that request directly to your NAS on that port, which is where the application is listening. So then you would put the IP of your, like the public IP of your home as the IP instead of the internal IP of the NAS. And then you put the port, and then that'll take you there and it'll work fine. It's just that, when you're exposing an application to the public internet, you risk, malicious actors trying to hit your application and see what you have and stuff like that. So, but that's the two ways you can do it. You can use a VPN, or you can expose the application through your router. So that's going to be it. Hopefully this video helped you out on understanding how to troubleshoot things, and also how to get this good application going. This is a very good application. I highly recommend it. It's very good because it's like an R, it's C# based, so it synchronizes and gives you all the benefits that you need without having to pay money. So I highly recommend this application. That's going to be it for this one. Remember, if you like the content, press the like button under the video. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. That helps us grow. And that helps us, it motivates me to keep working on the videos for the channel. Also remember, you should not be seeing any ads in my videos. I'm not monetizing this channel. I'm entirely relying on your support. So please, if you want to support me, go to the link in the description below and give me a donation through PayPal or through Bitcoin. The Bitcoin address is also there. And that's going to help me to focus more on your request and give you good quality content, and not have to think about monetizing the channel and then just bombard you with ads, which is what everybody does on YouTube. That's it for this one. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.